guys for joining. It's a pleasure to welcome you to our boardroom session today. And it's a big pleasure to welcome Indran, who's going to be leading the session. Uma is a qualified accountant. She's got 25 years experience supporting both private and public businesses with a specialism in turnaround, organisational change. She's going to lead a session today on, as you can see on the screen, identifying financial risks and planning for mitigating the adverse impact of those risks. So yeah, we can all just keep our microphones muted. We thought the best way to manage this would be once Uma's kind of finished with the presentation, we'll address any questions, and we want it to be interactive, so have people jump in with their own experiences. If you want to pop questions in the chat and we can come back to them, that would be absolutely fab. And with that, I will pass over to you, Uma. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christine, for introducing me to this lovely crowd. It's great to see you all on a sunny afternoon outside. Thank you for coming along. And I'll quickly I want to share my recent experience. It's still ongoing, very much ongoing, but the recent one. And it's about identifying financial risks and mitigating them. Because we, in the most recent organization, it's still going on, the process. We knew that we were going to lose a major income stream. There's 40% of our income stream was going to be lost. And the difficulty, it is done at a national level, government level, lots of structural changes taking place, and that was going to impact us. We are thinking it's going to happen. There's a strong possibility it's going to happen, so we had to be prepared. But more than that, we immediately had another issue to deal with. For immediate revenue of 20% was cut back, and also the other income contract prices were also not keeping up with inflation, whilst we know that 90% of our income, which is in staff costs, are going to be given a good we have to give them a good pay rise, let's say, because they are well deserved and they are really dedicated, motivated staff, and we need to retain them. So that was the challenge that we had. So immediately what I had to do was to produce a 3-year plan of doing nothing. If we were going to get all these hits in income and we have to give the staff the pay increments, what's going to happen to us? What's our bottom line going to be looking like? Obviously, it was not looking pretty. And also it was going to adversely impact our reserves. And we need, from a governance point of view, to keep a certain level of reserves in place. So we know that we need to do something immediately to address the first immediate issue. So what we did was the chairman would have circulated a template for SWOT and PESTLE analysis, looking at our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and opportunities and threats, and also looking at the wider environment of the political, environmental, social, technological, legal, and environmental issues. So what we each one thought was given to each board member to do it individually. So the group think and our mental, we won't be constrained by anything. And then we sent it off to the chairman, and he collated it, put it together. And then at the board meeting, we had discussed it and we debated it in great length. Now, for instance, everyone agreed that we had a great chairman. The leadership team was great. So that was a strength. But me, and luckily someone who backed me up, she in her career was a recruitment. She owned her own recruitment organization for IT technology people, and her husband was also in the technology field. So we both felt that AI is something that we should be considering. Will give us it's a great opportunity for us. The chairman said, where are we going to get the finances to host this and all the other bits because we can get people in, but we need financial backing for that. So I would have said, obviously, we have a loose relationship with this, with the central. We are, we are an affiliated model. So we are very much independent, but we can go for help to the head office. So we could get some, but then he said, no, they also have got limited funds. So what are we going to do? So that's just one example of the debates. However, now I can be pleased to say that it is part of the group level strategy that we are going to find some way in which to move the AI agenda forward. So AI is going to be a big help for us. So that's just one example of things that went on at the discussion table. And as a board, we decided immediately we needed to do something, and there has to be a reorganization. Now, to do a reorganization, we all had our various experiences in that, but there was someone who has done it for this industry, and he's an expert on it. And also the CEO knows the industry and the organization very well. She's been in it for a long time, and she had the trust of the people as well and the corporation. So CEO was going to be on it. They were going to get a change management consultant. The chairman had a HR background in banking for a major bank, so he was another strong candidate. Another director who was a HR person, she was also going to be on it. So they were going to deal with the operational level change management of this project. However, we as a board will be reviewing the plans, devising and reviewing the plans, and communication, which is going to be very important, because if there was going to be redundancies, it's going to have a lot of soft skills needed. So, and we were looking at the communications as well. And when they did devise a structural plan, or how they were going to restructure it, that means we were going to do a recruitment for it, and how the job description should be tailored to make it fair as well. So the wording of the job descriptions all we'll discuss at board level as well. So that's few things that we were doing. And then, so at board level, we agreed on the timetable and the communications and things, and we also followed it up. As every stage we had several meetings rather than the routine planned ones. At board level, we would be looking to see how the implementation was going on. And well within 6 months, I'm very pleased to say it was very successful. There were few tears, and it was well managed. So that's the thing that most managers fear of, and that went very well. Now, then after that, we had to do another 3-year financial plan, just to see what the impacts of all these changes going to be. And we also got we are constantly having new income streams coming through, but they are not steady as well, because there are some of them, apart from the one that I mentioned about the 40% and the 20%, the others are project-based, and as the temporary needs arise, they come, and there's a definite timeline for it. So I took all that into account. So when I do the 3-year financial plans, the income, top level income, gets a lot of detail, a fair amount of good eyeball over it, backups included. And then we have also the manpower plan. And in this one, we had redundancy costs as well. And so along with all this, the actuals were also being monitored along with the 3-year financial plans. And I'm glad to say that we were going to make a small surplus, because we were going to spend on staff training and the technology involved in it to speed them up, make them more efficient, and take the stress out of people's lives in a way, through efficiencies. So we turned around the reserve position. That was great. That was great news. Now we still had the other bit, the 40% of revenue that in 4 years' time we're going to lose. So we have to give a good thinking behind that. So we had a strategy day, we have it every year. The year the theme was on brainstorming about what else we can do to mitigate this upcoming risk. We talked about before the strategy, we prepared for it. Revisited our SWOTs and PESTLEs and everything, and we really debated it in detail. Now the focus was more on looking at thinking outside the box completely and thinking of alliances. Before then, we were looking at other models of things that's happened in similar sort of organizations, the joint ventures they had, the experiences they had, the mergers, and there are different business models to the organization as a whole that could be done. So, and what are the advantages and disadvantages? For instance, culture changes is one thing that can disrupt, that we all know in any organization. But there are certain benefits as well. When we go out and we tender for income, sometimes when you get greater negotiation power, and even people who are heading all the money love to deal with larger organizations to make it life easier for them as well. So there are several advantages of both and disadvantages. So we discussed everything in detail. So all those were discussed and recorded. So that's what we are having at the moment. And then we also thought about staying as a business, but diversifying it. But within the rules, we can't do certain things. So in order to see that, we might have to set up another separate organization. So we still have it, and it's still an ongoing process. And we are going to have lots of meetings to progress this forward. And we also, our board is now more strengthened with people from law and HR, people on board as well, to give their different perspectives. So this is my experience, and it's ongoing. And in certain other organizations, we are looking into alliances and joint ventures, mergers as well. And it's not something that happens overnight, because certain things are produced, taken to the board. There's a lengthy process involved when it comes to these, and identifying organizations, taking it to the board, and having the criteria, first of all, at board meetings. Just talking, this is not happening here, but in other organizations, it would have happened. We sort of have the sort of like criteria in which we would be looking at companies which are going to meet our needs. And then we look at all the target organizations, and then decide which ones need an in-depth analysis. And also it may not be, certain information may not be in the open. So we have to formally go and make an offer and then get information. So that's just in a nutshell. But that process is not done. But the chairman knows, and he is in talks with various organizations, because they have got the relationship with them. So that's all going on at the moment. So that's in a nutshell my experience. Now I'm going to open the floor up to find out from you all any questions that you all have, which I could help you. I hope my experience might help you with, or you might have a lot of, I'm sure here there's a lot of wealth of information. So I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot today as well. So over to you all.
Thanks, Uma. Really appreciate you going through the details there. Yeah, and I guess, it's obviously, really relevant to, most of our audience today are finance directors and CFOs. I'm sure there's a lot of information and insight within the room of where people have been through similar situations. So it'd be really good to have people just and share insight. So I'm not going to speak anymore, and then it's going to encourage everyone to get involved.
I guess I'm Mark Turner from Belstaff. I guess the challenge for some businesses is it's that piece about having the backing of the board and the chairman or the chief exec. You can sometimes feel a bit of a sort of lone island, if that's the word. I think in what you said there, you were sort of fully back. The chairman was fully on board, sort of led this. We're in retail. It's tough at the moment, and it's how do you bring everyone along with you? You can sort of see that we need to take some corrective action here, but it's how do you if other people sort of want to push forward, it's how do you sort of strike that balance between sort of holding things back and at the same time not sort of being too restrictive. And I think that's one of the challenges I've got here at Belstaff, really.
That's a very good question that you asked, because our chairman is more conservative, and the CEO is the current CEO, because we have a change of CEO. It's not because it was mutually agreed. She was nearing retirement, the one who did the restructuring, and he was deputy person, and now he's interim for the moment because lots of changes, and he is quite buoyant. So at our strategy day, he was being very buoyant, and I was of course backing him up. But I noticed we haven't had our second meeting. Well, we did have a second meeting, but a proper meeting yet. And I did notice at the risk committee meetings that I attend that he was a bit more standing back. I just felt that he was a slightly bit cautious. So it depends. It's also getting some people to back you up is very important in that stream. And in another organization where I am, I was just helping on the strategy bit, but the board member was someone who I knew, who I was helping. And so he was quite, he's a buoyant person. He was pushing things forward. But the chairman and the board were not happy with they didn't want to, because they were very cautious. Major cultural change, that's another thing that they are worried about. Their board was worried about. But now their board has changed as well, for whatever reasons, I don't know. So there are lots of things that can happen to make it successful. And also getting now these organizations that I've been working with have got a lot of client-facing roles, so it's also getting clients on board with the changes. Maybe they may not involve them, but maybe some sort of backing from them also could help as well. So those are just what I could share. Anyone else, please? We'd love to hear from you all.
I was just going to say, Mark, do you think the size of the business makes a difference as well? Because I always feel like smaller organisations can be a lot more agile and react more quickly if they need to diversify. Whereas if there's a much bigger, you know, layers and it's got to go up those layers, it seems to be a lot slower.
Yeah, it's partly that, I think. And there is a structural element to what we, our ownership isn't retail. And I think also the nature of what we do, it's much more sort of trend led. It's not as if you've got big contracts that you can see, in 2, 3, 4 years time, these are going to expire. You're at the mercy of the retail market. And that changes sort of day by day, week by week, month by month. So I think it's, there's always a period, and this isn't unique to Belstaff. This is just retail. There's always a period of, things start. You can go through a strong growth phase. Things start to slow off, and at some point you go over the curve. And it's at what point do you sort of address that, acknowledge that, arrest that, and so on. And I think we're sort of, which is not unique to Belstaff. We're sort of down here. At what point do we start, take mitigating action? Because it's really hard to assess of when that's going to end, and the market's going to sort of come back, bounce back. So I think there's also about the industry has a big impact too.
And it's a premium brand, isn't it, Belstaff?
It is, yeah. And I think that's it.
The product, can you? You can't just say, oh, we'll just,
Well, this is it. And the cost of living plays a huge amount, or has a huge impact. I mean, I've worked for sort of value retailers, and you can fill a shopping bag for not much money. I've worked for the other extreme, sort of true luxury, where those customers to a point are insulated. They have got real wealth. I think a company like Belstaff, it's a considered purchase. You can, a big part of our business are jackets, and you can make your jacket last, or you can go and get a cheaper option. So there are specific challenges, I think, within the retail industry that are unique to Belstaff and businesses like Belstaff. Your mortgage payment's gone up by 200 quid a month. You're gonna, what? I'll make that jacket last another year. That's the reality of.
All right, I won't wear a jacket.
Yeah, this is it.
Well, yeah, I agree that my jackets, I like long-lasting ones. So which market, if I can ask, because I'm not really well versed with the name. I'm sorry for my ignorance, but
no, not at all.
High-end market, or
it's sort of that we say luxury. I mean, it's high end. It's sort of premium high street. So
premium.
Say, we say do a wax cotton jacket that I think retails for £500 or so. So it's not sort of true luxury, but it's definitely a considered purchase.
£500 a jacket. So
yeah, but then
that's
within and they're extremely well made. But at that price point, there are other. I mean, Barber, they're sort of obvious. It's a cheaper price point. I mean, it's. I would say this, but it's not as good as product. But there are reasons why we might are more expensive. But it's that, and it's a long-lasting product as well. So if you buy one 5 years ago, you can you can make it last. So it's a challenge, and I think that. The reason I raise that, it has a knock on in terms of how we approach, when we do talk about risk and mitigating that.
Yeah.
It takes a bit of time to accept, at board level that, there are issues, or, we need to take sort of, mitigating action because the trends sometimes aren't so obvious. I don't know what we're going to sell next month. I don't know what we're going to sell next week. We're not sort of contract led. So, you very much are at the mercy of the markets, and, you've got to be a bit of a mind reader to be able to respond to that.
It's mind-boggling for me.
Yeah.
But you will have experts in it, isn't it? You'll have a purchasing department and sales department, like the department who specializes in identifying what the trends are. Am I right?
You have. I mean, this is it. I mean, we've got a purchasing department that, and again, that will obviously react to, we'll do a budget. We'll sort of be as reactive as we can. But once you've committed to inventory, the lead times we've got, by the time you sort of buy fabric and so on, you are talking about 6 months. You commit to that, and then, I mean, it was really last year, September onwards, the bottom fell out of the market. It was pretty brutal. Hence why you see, Farfetch, which was the sort of darling of e-com retail, was, I think the IPO was over $1 billion, I think, but has been taken back to private ownership. Matches, these sort of players have gone into administration. So the market is tough, and there's a huge amount of expertise in these businesses, but you could only do so much. It's tough, and as I say, the reason I raise it is because it does have a knock on in terms of, I imagine if say you've got a clear path, you've got a contract-led business, you sort of know you've got some advance warning, and therefore you can sort of get the buy-in maybe slightly easier. I'm sure there are other challenges, but to get the buy-in of the board, it's just interesting with us, as we're talking, we all come to different conclusions. We get to the same point, albeit at different times. So for me, there's an urgency there. For others, it's do you know what, you just need to weather the storm, and things will come back. So, and that's something none of us really know.
Yeah, this is very interesting points. I'll have to ask the people who are specialists in this. Whoever I know, I will be definitely asking.
We've got a question in chat actually from Tim. I don't know whether Tim, do you want to just expand on that? Tim Masters, is he still with us?
Sorry, I was trying to find the unmute button. Yeah, I kind of the slide that you have on screen at the moment, obviously the situation you're in is facing, many different options and possibilities. How do you narrow that down? Because some of them require external parties. So anything involving an alliance, a JV, or a merger, you need a partner who's willing to play their part. But you could spend an awful lot of time chasing your tail trying to find that partner that is willing to do what you need. How do you try and cut that down and avoid time spent chasing your tail and sort of enabling you to focus on the realistic outcomes, I suppose?
They know, because, for example, the chairman, especially he's within the industry space that we are in, he's in conversation with all the CEOs, and he goes in their they have chairman's meetings and everything else. So he's seeing them, and he is testing the water with various so he's having conversations, and he knows where they are not. He got the feeler. Apart from us looking at numbers and things, he has a feeler for appetite, what their options are, or they had a merger recently, so they're not going to look at something immediately. So he has got the feeler of the people, the organization's appetite, other organizations' appetite. So we haven't come down to that yet for finding the ideal organization yet, but they have got their feelers out, and they are in conversation. So that's through their networking conversations. That's a rich part that they have got.
So there's a big difference between finding a sort of investor-led approach, which may just be money and appetite and maybe a little bit of expertise, versus a strategic approach, which is effectively people already that may be interested or can cooperate in some way.
Yes, this is a strategic level. He's not going to get contracts from them. These are organizations we are thinking in terms of merging with.
Yeah.
So he is in conversations with every one of them, all the possibilities. He's having his antenna out in conversations with the local, because we want as much as possible to concentrate locally because the local ones are because we are helping the local community. So they should have good knowledge of the community as well. If we were to give so the obvious first step would be to look at the locals, all the local organizations who we could join up with. So finding out the things that we may not see on paper or not published things, getting the feeling, because always one-to-one conversations, in-depth conversations reveal much more than anything else. And so that would be the first step.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim, for asking. It's a great question.
We've got a question from Jan. Jan, do you want to just expand on that?
Hello, hi. I just wanted to, thank you, Uma, for the great presentation as well. I just wanted to add on the way to go about this sometimes could be looking at most obvious places like LinkedIn, Eventbrite as well, where there are a lot of sessions for free where people from all the sectors and industries dive in and discuss issues as well. So I guess from a strategic way, what we want to also do is to proactively decision make. And now we are stepping into AI, and it's going to be quite a few years until we get into edge computing, which is where we get the users, customers at the point of making real-time decisions. So we are not there yet. I was just thinking of ways like sharing data and insights with, in terms of mitigating the risks. Sharing data and insights with supply chains can help to identify potential disruptors early on, whatever market you are, allowing companies to implement contingency plans collectively. Or another option would be collaborating with competitors, provided it's safe to do so, or with industry peers as well. When I say industry peers, it could be like LinkedIn or Eventbrite and various other free sources as well. There's so much that we can dip into. And this comes by sharing your expertise and willing to offer industry experts in areas that they really don't need help. And then you never realize what's coming around from the other end as well. They might suggest ways that they can link you with industry peers to address common challenges. So, for example, if you take cybersecurity threats, that could be a collective resilience and risk mitigation effort here that can go in as well. Another one would be like finding companies in the same industry that can accelerate innovation and spread financial risk in terms of collective research and development in new products. So these are ways that we can, I don't think we need to actually sometimes, I'd like to be very positive here and say, rather than wait for a problem and then dive in immediately, if we have like a 5-year business plan, if we can like allocate resources in a very consistent, but in small ways as well, where we can do all the supply chain collaboration, industry alliance, joint R&D in little ways all the time, then I think we don't come with all the problems in one go, where we are kind of rushing in terms of cost and time, and sometimes the best decisions are not made that way. It's very easy for me to say that, but these are just some of my suggestions. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jan. Yes, we did see all this coming, and then we planned well ahead of all the other people in our, but there is also some element of confidentiality, because definitely all organizations, organizations I deal with, I have to sign confidentiality agreements. So I don't post on LinkedIn or share to get ideas on most things because of the confidentiality element of it. And even say, for instance, there was something about financial risks about something else, about our investment side. And I would have mentioned that I have a finance network. I'm also a member of FEM, Finance Executive Networking Group. So I would have shared ideas. And there are people who do deal in that side of things in that group. And then I think the person who's in charge of risk said, why do you want, he's a finance person as well. So he said, why do you want to go and ask them? We have in-house resources, because they don't want us to, but actually most of the help I got was from the FEM, because sometimes even people trying to sell their products don't want to spend time with people if they think they're not going to make immediate money. So they were not withholding various rates and things. And I had to approach my FEM member and get someone to give me the rates, current interest rates, what's going on in the market. What's going on in the market. So all that was happening because I reached out, but they don't particularly like me reaching out and diverging too much. So that is a consideration I have to take. Thanks, Jen.
So Stephen, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, I was just trying to understand sort of better how this particular exercise that you undertook and I guess is ongoing fitted into the overall context of the business and its overall approach to risk and risk management. Sort of where I work, which is a consultancy business.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. Stephen, when you say your consultancy, do you
a lot in the defense sector, sort of
defense,
a lot of other people's companies are as well.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Well,
so I was just trying to understand how this fitted into the overall approach that your business had or has to risk management.
Yes, because we do in the SWOT analysis, we do see the threats as a risk, and any weaknesses we have is a risk as well. And then when we look at the political, economical, and all that, there are opportunities and threats. So we have to take all that threats. Everything that's coming out of there as threats is what we have to know how to mitigate and what plans we have to put forward to achieve that. So anything that we are going to think about in coming up with our options to handle one stream of major threats, the financial bit, we have to think in terms of what other threats there are that we have to be aware of when we look at whatever options we are going to face. And we have a good debate on that as well. And people bring in their different perspectives because the chairman and all, they do their networking, so they'll have their industry knowledge behind what's going on. And then we have the legal people knowing from the legal point of view, hopefully should, and then me from the finance. So that's what we are, skills that we are bringing in, as well as what broadly is happening around us as well. Should.
And do you have a risk committee?
We have a risk committee. And I'm part of the risk committee as well. We do have, and on the risk committee, there's especially IT, someone who's very good at IT. So IT plays a major, is because of GDPR reasons and everything else, and all the other things that go on, cyber security, all those. We have IT people on. One IT person at least who attends.
So can I ask, Uma, I mean, obviously you've hit a major blip in the road, to be fair. Presumably your risk committee, or maybe not presumably, because maybe it just came out of the blue, but the question then is, did your risk committee have that identified before you hit the problem?
Yes, the financial problem, yes, definitely. I mean, we all sort of knew it from the top of our heads, but yes, they did. They did.
Well, the loss of sales rather than financial problem.
Yes, definitely. It's something that we discussed. Now we're going to, in all our risk committee meetings, that holds a finance front, which I lead up, we do talk about those risks and how to mitigate it.
And how far in advance before it became a problem did you know it was going to be a problem?
We knew it as soon as got the wind about the contract, the 40% income, as long when the government brought in whatever structural changes they were doing, we knew it's going to be a problem. At that time, it was flagged up as they raised certain things were happening there. It was raised up here. So that, and then from the CEO point of view, she has good relationships with the major contract, the 20% contract place, and she knew from discussions that it was going to get reduced. Then it was flagged. She reduces going to flagged up, and we knew that our staff cost, we had to put it up. So that was a major, top level alarm bells, and we immediately took.
And was it kind of a year before or 6 months before it actually?
A year before.
So that gives you plenty of time to go through this process and figure out a plan B, I guess, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yes, definitely. And the 4 years, we still got 4 years to think about the real, or as organization, how we need to evolve, because not just getting income, but the type of organizations we have to merge with, or how we have to build another organization to deal with it. So it gives us enough time, because usually organization-wide level change takes a longer time. So that's going to take more than a year too.
I guess that's where the size does come in there, doesn't it? Because it's much smaller businesses can pivot much more quickly. I know when COVID hit and we were speaking to companies kind of after the pandemic, it was the smaller businesses that were able to, change direction really quickly. And they were the ones that could be agile, that seemed to weather the storm obviously more effectively.
Yes, and also it depends on the board as well, because some, for example, as I was telling you, our chairman is very risk averse. And another organization which I was helping, their board was, chairman perhaps was also risk averse. So their risk averseness is also a major factor that comes into play. So sometimes it can be a small organization, but if they're risk averse, then we have got more to sort of change. Because a lot of government sort of public scrutiny is on us. So hence we need to be more careful. The check and balances are so much in these small organizations, which are.
Being devil's advocate, however, smaller organizations probably have less availability or access to funding sources, which potentially, whilst they might be more agile and fleet of foot, it's harder for them to get funding often. I would suggest, as devil's advocate, if I may.
Yes, negotiation power comes with size. So. And also for people giving the funding, also monitoring, because rather than monitoring small things, monitoring a larger thing, if you have a few larger things monitoring, it's easy as well from staffing level point of view. So yes.
And Uma, hi, Julian Irby. Has the organisation considered operating profitably without this 40% revenue? And has it looked at how it can actually structure itself to actually maintain positive cash flow, positive profitability without that revenue?
That's an excellent question, Julian. The whole point is if we lose it, we lose some of that profitability in a way, which helps to contribute towards our overheads. So currently, so we are looking at that. That's a very good question. So
yeah, because you know, we can look at things that we think are fixed costs, but all costs are variable over a long enough period of time, and sometimes these big changes create an opportunity within organizations to look at their structures in completely different ways. You know, and if you kind of get to a point where you can actually say, well, do you know what, if we had this was our revenue, we can structure ourselves in a slightly different way, remove some of the overheads that we've built up over time, because organizations naturally build up overheads, they spend money when times are good, you know, and suddenly these things become important to them. But actually, you know, if you haven't got the money, then you can't afford to have, you know, quite as many support services as you need. You need to kind of look at what's happening in the organization, cut out some of those activities that are done but don't really add any value. I used to work for a rather large national estate agency chain. We did some work looking around what happens in our branches, and we kind of figured out that you know, 30% of people's time was spent on essential stuff that really added value, and 30% of their time was spent on stuff that was essential but didn't really add any value. Now, getting rid of that's quite difficult, but it kind of points to the fact that within organizations, you end up creating work and activities that don't actually add value. And actually, if you really have to, you know, if your back is against the wall, so to speak, it's those opportunities to remove costs that can actually make quite a transformational change in terms of your business activities.
That's a very good point you made, Julian. It's true, very true, that we did at the first stage, I think, because the CEO who knows the ins and outs of the business would have weeded out all those and along with all her people who help her, the closer circles would have weeded it out. So now we are left with the staff costs, which are providing the element of service that they need. So let's hope that they are all working productively and they actually burnt out. We are now worried if we don't want to burn them out as well. So that's another issue. So we are operating because there are hardly any other overheads that we are spending on other than what's essential. So it's just, you know, trying to get any more from this, it will be a challenge. And without going too much into the business, also the major 40%, which I said we lose, if we lose, we have to really think something radical. That's the thing. We made the inefficiencies, all that out. We took that out. Now we have to look at radical changes, and hopefully it has to be income-led. It has to be income-led changes that we have to look at.
Mark, just very quickly, you might want to also think at collaborative consumption. Now that you have said there's no frills cut off in terms of unnecessary spend, if about 20% can cause 80% of the impact, we might want to actually look at the real fixed cost base or whatever we are doing and think whether we can, rather than say 500 people in company A consume, say, that one fixed pot of money, whether that can be that 500 reduced to a less amount by 2 or 3 companies collaborating. So
yes, we are looking at that. That's all part of the, it's all part of the alliance JVs, you know, all that is, that sort of thought is going through our mind. There are so many things that we can do. So all that is part and parcel of that as well. Yes. And
the other one for crowdfunding platforms where you can raise money from there, that's another option as well, because it's quite hot there. People want to, they get very good ROI on investments on crowdfunding platforms. And sometimes we always tend to go through the traditional routes of raising money, which can be very tricky and hard because there are a lot of rules. You might want to look at the risks and mitigation of, say, crowdfunding. Let's say I'm very rich and I have 1 million. I put it into a crowdfunding platform and you meet me there and you get my 1 million. I'm sorry, Uma, I don't have 1 million, but I'm just saying.
No, I do. I think they did have funding. There were a few crowdfunding equivalents of things that they did have. They weren't going up to 1 million, definitely not. But of course, on a smaller scale, there was something else going on. But it's a good thing that you're sort of thanks for the very open insights. thoughts. Yeah.
Uma, this is John Pugh. Give me some feedback here.
Yes.
I'd be a little dismayed. It feels like the horse and the bolted gate somehow. If I had the business reliant upon, or 40% of the business reliant on a contract, and then I was having to react, I would have thought that there was a contingency plan, not the least of which was to make sure that the business in its entirety was not a business that was reliant to the extent of 40% of its revenue with one major contract. Therefore, surely there should have been in the risk analysis of the underlying risk analysis, which, you know, risk aversion is a major subject in all sizes of business these days. Surely there should have been a fire blanket plan in place to action immediately responses to mitigate the impact of the major loss. So I feel that it's a bit like the horse and the bolted gate in some respects.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with what you're saying. This was this because sometimes it's done with when you take on contracts, it's done with the collaborations with government and everyone else, with all the bodies, and lots of changes we have to do. This is a learning because I for about a year, more than a year, but well before my time, there was a lot going on at national level with agreements with the government as well. And this was a lucrative business that came up. Not lucrative, I wouldn't want to say lucrative, but it was helping us. So it did come. And then when certain things begin to happen at government level, structural changes, that's when the alert started that we need to do something. So I agree, you should never have, put large amounts of money. You must have always backup plans. That should have happened well before, I agree. But now we have got 4 years at least to sort of think about something really. But it's a good point we have to bear in mind. Thanks.
Yeah, so I guess with you having the 4 years, that's the period of time to sort of think about where
you really have to give a good thought. Yeah. And anything can happen because this was an opportunity that came across and the government needed some assistance. So that's how this came about. And I guess there are businesses out there that don't have 4 years. They have the realization that, we're going to lose a big chunk of revenue and it's going to happen a lot sooner, and then it's a really difficult situation. Yes, that's why scanning the environment and having your systems to know what's going on. Let's speak about fashion, for instance. It's so important, not easy at all. Brilliant. Well, there's no more questions in the chat. I don't know if anyone else has anything they want to add. I feel like it's been a really interesting discussion and lots of people contributing, which is always nice. So yeah, last call for any comments. Anything, any of your own experiences that you want to share? Because we started off with a very good and a very thought-provoking one. Because this will make me want to ask other people in the industry, but they do.
And Uma, just one last one.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not quite sure what industry you're in or what your customer base is like, but there may be value in the customer. But I mean, look, at the end of the day, what you're trying to do, and it depends whether you're a social enterprise or not. It sounds like you might be to a degree, but businesses are there to maximize shareholder value.
Yeah.
If you've got a contract base, a revenue base that's of a recurring nature, and otherwise is relatively stable, there may be value in that customer base to another business, and not through an alliance, a JV, or a merger, but through a sale of the business. And you might actually find that the more value for the shareholders in that business by actually selling that business out to somebody else who can extract synergies from that, potentially will have other revenue streams that they can apply into that customer base.
That's a very good thought, Julian, and extremely valid point. Yes, you're right. But however, we are not a shareholder-based organization, and it is a social, non-profit. So hence, this organization doesn't have the choice, and it's going to be taken back. There is a mechanism by which the government, who is needing to have the service and restructuring, might take the people on a two-pay basis, not on the people base, I think. So we won't lose money out of it, but we lose an income stream. But we can't make money out of it as such, just as a sale. So we're not in that.
Just very quickly, also, if I may add 3 more points. Since it is a not-for-profit, I think the trend, or the most important for the long run, is to look at the nature of costs and revenue, one. And the second is diversification and self-sustainability as much as we can. I think we're seeing with the energy prices we are paying, we're all generating our own energy. I think that applies whether you're a profit or not for profit. One is actual sustainability, green finance, because as finance folks, we all know the importance of being actually working together with environment. So
yes,
we do, if we portray ourselves as a sustainable organization, that helps with your not-for-profit organizations merger or acquisition value as well, and as responsible leaders. So I just want to add that as the final.
Thanks, Jan. That's a very valuable, piece of, because at the moment our CEO, he is very much a buoyant person. He has now got some contracts on the environmental front. Knowing that these sort of things, because people are having facing, it's more of the customer front, they're having a lot of problems. That's one of their, we have a sort of like a survey where the customer is having the biggest hits or hurts or worries. And this is going up high on it as well. So he has got a lot of projects coming along. Yeah, it's an excellent idea.
I just want to add, we have sustainability as one of our key reporting tools as well. And particularly looking at a JV or acquisition, both your customer, be it even a little kid on the road will ask you, Mom, are they actually green and are they clean? We would like to work with such organizations, and that fits all the way up. So I think sustainability is super key for all organizations, and as leaders, I think we should champion ourselves and be proud of it.
I agree. And even in my day job, the CEO is very keen on, not the CFO is very keen on the sustainability issues. We started that one out as well. But I must admit, the youngsters I meet don't seem to be talking, though all the polls says they're asking for sustainability and everything else when they go apply for jobs. I'm hearing that. Though I'm hearing that, when I meet the youngsters, I don't get that feel that is high on their agenda. And when I do ask them, is it high? They don't seem to be agreeing either. So the poll saying and the actual, people is sometimes different. But yeah, he's very keen on it. So good. And I'm sort of part of that team as well in my day job.
Brilliant. Well, I'm conscious of time. We've just hit the 50-minute mark, which is fantastic. So yeah, a really, really interesting session. And thank you so much, Uma, for sort of preparing, presenting and leading the session. And thank you to everyone who's contributed. I think it's been really interesting. So I guess if we've got no more questions or insight, we can probably wrap things up, because we always like to keep it under an hour. We can continue the chat for those of you who aren't a member of the FD and CFO network on Guild. You'll receive details via email after the session. And it's basically a platform where you can post questions, ask for recommendations, and gain insight from fellow FDs and CFOs throughout the UK. So yeah, with that, I guess we can close out. Thank you so much, Uma. Really, really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Chris, for organizing this, and also for all the panelists who've been asking interesting questions and giving their experience and insights. Thank you all.